Hello everyone and welcome to the Acer Education webinar series. I am the Education Marketing Manager for Acer America and I will be your host for this session. Our presentation today is the power of student technology. Before we start, I'll take this opportunity to make some housekeeping announcements. Please note that this session is being streamed online. Please turn up the volume on your computer speakers. Not need to dial into a conference bridge for the audio. We will host a question-answer session at the end of the presentation. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the presentation using the chat window at the bottom right corner of your screen. All questions will be collected and answered in the question-answer session at the end. Last but not the least, the session is being recorded and will be available on our education website in about 3 business days. It is an honor to introduce our guest speaker today, Luann Hughes. Luann is the Director of Technology for Temple Independent School District in Texas. Luann has served in public schools in Texas since 1979. She has been the Director of Technology for Temple Independent School District for the past 14 years. As Technology Director, she has implemented network services such as wireless infrastructure, file storage, security systems, and a VoIP phone system. She has also implemented multiple major software services such as instructional management, student management, and HR financial services. Luann has brought in over $3 million in various grants for TISD. Luann is an instructional leader for both her district and TCEA Area 12, where she is currently serving as director. Hughes holds multiple MOS certifications and is a Google certified trainer. With this, I'm now going to hand it over to Luann.
I appreciate that. And I find it's an honor to be presenting with you all today, and I hope that our journey through student technology is helpful to you, and you are willing to share your journeys with us also. We started our journey a few years back with the presumption that, and the belief that students who don't have technology are at academic disadvantage. Intake is very common in lots of school districts. 5% of our students qualify for free and reduced lunch. As we folks who work in public schools know, students who qualify for free and reduced lunch are less likely to have consistent and adequate access to technology as they need it. We have our 8th graders 4 years ago because we knew that we were looking at determining more student technology in the district. And we determined at that point that 25% of our students don't have internet access outside of school. So while it's important that we provide devices for students and good things to do on those devices, it's also important that we review how students are acting when they're not within the school walls. Ratio to numbers of students to computers at school was 6, and then that was a very consistent number from the beginnings of my time with Temple ISD. In 2010, my superintendent challenged me to say that technology was not what it needed to be in our district, and we do something about it. She did say, you know, I know that's going to cost a lot of money. You've told me that. We make some plans to take care of that. We've been that journey. Successful technology plans are built in the right order with the right people. And I'm blessed in Temple to be able to work with the right people and to be able to do things, I believe, in the right order. The method that we used involved getting your leadership in at the top, starting the process. We have an implementation plan. We started with infrastructure and bandwidth and got that built out. We created policies and procedures to match what we needed. Some of these are parallel in the middle, but about this order. Student selection and management was priority. We standardize in Temple ISD as much as we can on as few platforms and as few pieces of software as possible in order to get the maximum usage out of that equipment and software. We also needed to look at supporting personnel to make sure that we had enough to allocated for this project. We all along had online resources as those developed over the last, and those have developed tremendously over the past 5 or 6 years, but we also wanted to look at digital textbooks and see what options we had there. And then, not last but certainly not least, was student and staff training on how to use going to be able to implement. The senior leadership piece. The superintendent who charged me with coming up with a plan, the tax ratification initiative to provide about $1 million annually for student technology. This is different, I think, than lots of districts, at least in Texas, do. It's pretty common to see bonds being passed and technology being passed through bonds. If you're in a high-growth district, that might work for you pretty well. Not in a high-growth district. Able to use $1 million annually for students was an incredible way to manage this. Now we have about 8,600 students in our district. Already on a 5-year equipment refresh rotation, we had about 4,000 devices in our district prior to this tax ratification election, but many of those devices were dedicated to processes that had the staff and adults. We had certainly our share of computers, but not like we needed to really infuse the technology for education. So the ratification election passed in September of 2013 by a majority vote, which was a wonderful thing. We were able then to start implementing that next semester. So I happened to work for the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, which is not necessarily a usual path for a technology director in the school district. And we have about 8,600 students, so we're considered a medium-sized district in Texas. A lot of advantages being a medium-sized district. We can accomplish a lot of things. We have a little bit of money to be able to do some things. We can accomplish a lot that, a little bit faster fashion than a larger district could. But again, blessed to work for the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, and he's the one who led the visioning and planning and the initial implementation of this. Now, that was a huge shift for Temple ISD. Prior to this, Dr. Ott, who is my boss and the Assistant Superintendent, he was seen as a very separate piece from instruction. So having Dr. Ott and Dr. Battershell, our superintendent, lead this visioning and planning set the tone for this being a fully integrated solution. Now, I'm tasked with figuring out the best platforms and equipment, detailed 5-year plan, and developing the implementation and training schedules. To go over some of those things that I developed over those 5 years. The platform. Now, at the time that this was being planned, we did not have a student solution on either Microsoft Office or on Google Apps. Now, we use the Office suite, and we are a PC district, but we didn't have a student email solution in place. We didn't necessarily have a lot of applications designed directly for students. They used the Office suite, and they could certainly save their files in a home directory, but didn't have portfolios or any home access. So we determined that we would go ahead and move forward with Google Apps for Education. And that was it was really a toss-up. If somebody at the district told me they wanted to use Microsoft Office 365, and they had really done the research and chosen that, I would say both platforms are very good platforms. I regret that we've chosen Google Apps for Education. There have been lots of advantages on that side of things. created it, we created one domain. There was a lot of conversation about having two domains, one for students and one for teachers. Because we were really going to go ahead and keep our teachers using Outlook and keep the Office and Active Directory side of things, we decided that we would use one domain. I've been pleased a couple of times over that we were on one domain. A couple of applications we've used, it's been easier to implement because we have one Google domain. So this used Gmail, and again, they didn't have email accounts prior to that, so that was an easy piece of an implementation on that side. Still uses Outlook. When we do training, we encourage staff members that don't want to look at both email accounts to forward their Gmail accounts over to Outlook, and that's a very simple process. Microsoft Office is available on our PC side. For those who want to use Office, there are certain things that are done on the Office side of things. We have some classes that use these for maybe broadcasting or for computer programming, or have some in our career and technology department. We have some applications that make more sense on that side. My boss, Dr. Ott, and the implementation plan. These are 3 documents that he helped and I develop together as framing documents for our initiative. These documents include on the far left that developing tomorrow's critical thinkers and global learners. That's from Andrew Church's research, and we really based all 3 of these documents on Bloom's taxonomy and bringing forward higher thinking skills and using technology. It doesn't create higher order thinking skills, but it can be a catalyst to help students and teachers use higher order thinking skills. Andrew Church's model on the left, and in that model, you can find those models. I think that Nidhi has posted those in the chat, the links to those framing documents if you want to see those at greater depth. But under the Andrew Church one, we have remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And the white text on that far left document are the kinds of products that students or activities students might do to do those things. Under the taxonomy in the middle, that's a nod to Kathy Sharrock's using Bloom taxonomy with different apps. Those are very typical Chrome or Google apps that might be used when using this Bloom's taxonomy. The document on the far right is truly Temple's. It's our integration guidelines. So start at the top and work your way to the bottom. In this case, it's the opposite. So navigation, or the entry level, is where the teacher is still controlling the classroom and the management of everything. And we have some teacher expectations and some student expectations there. The level up, students begin to control some of their own learning. At the application level, students are acting and working on a more authentic level. On the advancement level, they're actually innovating and infusing. And the immersion level, students are creating. So again, if you're interested in those guidelines, they can be found at the links that Nidhi has posted on the right. At the same time, or maybe a bit prior to that, we were also working on infrastructure and bandwidth. Because we are at a 75% free and reduced lunch, Temple ISD did qualify for some E-rate funding. We were blessed to be able to combine E-rate funding for core infrastructure upgrade and a bond that did pass, and we were able, so we upgraded all of our switches in our network, and we were able to add access points for 4 rooms. This was in 2012. Next year, we had already applied for network funding again through E-rate. They actually were able to fund again, and we added another access point or more access points, so that we actually have access points in every room for wireless. That was we really didn't have a whole lot of wireless devices to start with, but we did go ahead and upgrade the wireless. or wireless, sorry. I would caution you, if you're working on your wireless as a preparation for your for a student deployment or a large deployment, to be sure to consider the following things. And we had a network engineer that helped us with this. Be sure firewall can manage the traffic you're going to put to it. We've got a content filter that can manage that also. And then you've got to figure your amount of bandwidth and what you're going to need, and maybe if you're doing a multi-year contract on bandwidth, that can grow your bandwidth. You're going to look at how you're going to manage your wireless and your network security, and if you're going to use BYOD, what's your anticipated BYOT, what's your anticipated BYOD traffic, and how are you going to manage it. Our implementation plan, I've got the TRE funded. Our implementations plan was to start at high school. We're going to start a phased-in one-to-one project. So we have one high school. We have 9th through 12th grade at that high school. We start with our freshman class, and our freshman class would get a device first. But we actually got our funding a little bit early, so we were able to spend about 6 months prior than what I thought we were going to get. We started at our high school with carts for every 2 classrooms. That was a great start for getting us going where we needed to go, because this is our first use of Chromebooks. This is our first use of Google. So they gave us a chance to actually train the high school students using those carts that we put out in the spring. And next year, the goal was to phase in again. We would phase in 9 through 12 1 year at a time. Then add a 2-to-1 ratio at grades 6 through 8 that next year. And after that, grade through 5, a 2-to-1 ratio. And then our K2, which is coming up for next year, will be a tablet implementation. And at this point, it looks like it'll probably be iPads. But all the rest of the devices at this point have been Chromebooks. We needed to look at, and I referred to this just a little bit earlier on, infrastructure and bandwidth, was home access. How are we going to help those 25% of kids who don't have home access? So you could just send the device home and make sure that you had things locally available. Many resources that students use require the internet. I've used, we are processed, but we have done several things towards that. One of those is, if you are in the state of Texas, they have offered a technology lending grant for the past 4 years. The technology lending grant can be however you choose to develop it, but it's designed for home access for kids. In Temple, it's for 120 personal Wi-Fi devices, and we happen to use Verizon as our carrier in the district, and so they're MiFis. So they can check out a MiFi for the year to go home with their Chromebook. This is for high school students. We have those MiFis set to the MAC address of the Chromebook, so that MiFi can only be used with that Chromebook. And then we have a filter put on that Chromebook to help secure that solution. We have the MiFis are great. I love MiFis, but they are not a sustainable solution for students because of the expense. This year was a city grant for some Cradlepoint routers. So Cradlepoint routers actually have a MiFi inside them, but that because of the way the router is set up, it can actually broadcast out to about 30 users, about 300 feet to 30 users. So a study of where the kids who were free and reduced lunch, and we found the high-density apartment areas. We've put out some Cradlepoint routers in conjunction with a city grant that allow students to, if they give us the MAC address of their personalized, or if they have a Chromebook from the district, we can attach, they can allow them to connect to that Cradlepoint router. It's a project we really want to grow further and more, because it actually plays out to be about $10 to $15 a year per student average for access, if you do it that way. We do have a couple of citywide coverage and it is going on. Our city is interested in looking at this. We've got our chamber looking at it. So we're still working on how we're going to develop better access for not just TISD students, but all families in Temple. Policies and procedures. The policies and procedures that you see on the left, the Chromebook classroom rules and the Chromebook cart procedures, those, and Nitty's also posted the link to these documents. Or we'll be posting those. She's got those. Thank you. But classroom procedures were procedures we came up with to help standardize for teachers to use carts in the room. Now, we don't require teachers to use these exactly as they're written, but we highly suggest they use a version of these, and it is the teacher's responsibility to make sure that the carts are well cared for. We do a check of those carts every semester at the end. We have a lead teacher on every campus or in every department at the high school that is in charge of being a technology liaison. We call them liaisons, and they help check those devices, make sure that the carts are being well maintained. We also allow teachers to combine carts if they want. Now, remember, we have one cart for every 2 classrooms at grades 3 through 8. So teachers can share those carts as they want to. They can split it in half. They can alternate days. If they borrow a cart from another classroom that's not using it that day, they can do that. We let them decide those things among themselves. Those are some Chromebook cart procedures that we gave them in that second document. This document, which I think was a nice thing for, particularly when we were first implementing Chromebooks in carts. It's just a quick start guide for using the Acer C720P, which is the device we use. So it tells you what's in the cart, what should you be looking for, how do you troubleshoot that. All right, the 2015-2016 Chromebook Handbook is the handbook we developed with the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services and the principal of the high school for our high school students who are taking devices home. Very different scenario to take the devices home and to manage those. So that's the Chromebook handout that we use with them. Now, last year, when we first did an implementation of one-to-one, we actually met with all parents who were receiving a device, went over the handbook with them to make sure they would understand. This year, we didn't require parent meetings as stringently. We still met as needed with parents. As the process has become more standardized and students know what to do and parents understand what's going on, we have, if we disseminate information, we can do it via the website or via letters home. If you've seen the poster at the bottom, the Before You Facebook or tweet or blog, think that is a great poster to share with kids or with staff. Let them think before they use social media. We have found that students use Google's to share, so you do have to teach students about what is important and how you manage your sharing. So when we talk about equipment selection, in the middle we have an Acer Chromebook, and we've standardized on the Acer C720P, which is a touchscreen Chromebook. The first touchscreen Chromebook that came out, I believe, and if it wasn't the first, it was close to the first, that would have been an affordable one, did for sure that Chromebooks, the touchscreen was going to be important. What we found, and we've surveyed students multiple times, and then we've watched them, it is very important to our students that students have a touchscreen Chromebook. We've used that device and are continuing to use that device, and I'm very pleased with it. On our left, you'll see a case, and that was the case we decided to use this year at the high school. We wanted to use an always-on case, so the kids wouldn't be taking it out of the case whenever they worked on it. We had a case last year that we weren't quite as pleased with. It was an always-on case. It was bulky, a little bit bulky, and had a pouch on it, so it wasn't easy to put in the backpack. We found these cases at volumecases.com, And one of the things that the students gave us feedback on this past year, so that they on the cases that they didn't like, other than they were bulky and they certainly weren't very cool looking, was that they have color choices. So we actually bought these cases, and we're able to, you can buy a certain quantity, you can buy different colors. So we bought 5 different colors of cases, and kids had a chance to pick. That's the case we use in our 9 through 12 grade one-to-one initiative, and been very pleased with it. Then the device over that looks kind of like a file cabinet is a black box locker. Just deploy the black box lockers at our elementary school for grades 3 through 5. Elementary decided they were not going to share a cart between 2 classrooms. They wanted to put 13 devices per room in grades 3 through 5. So this black box locker was as full a solution as we could come up with for a room cart. While it does look like a file cabinet, it's a little bit larger than a file cabinet. Very sturdy, very well put together, and we've gotten good feedback so far from our 3 through 5 teachers for this solution for storing our Chromebooks. On the right, that's a Datamation Gather Round cart. So some of our technicians call this the ice cream cart because it looks like a little ice cream cart. You can put 30 Chromebooks in that little cart, and it really has a very small footprint for a cart. It made me think in this picture that you can lift the basket out of the Chromebooks and pull it out. They're pretty to lift out, but they're not hard to put the Chromebooks back into the cart, and you have a top loading, which I really liked. We did have to spend some time figuring out how to label the the power cords, and to label the side of the Chromebook so that they matched up, so you didn't get your power cords all mixed up. But I've been very pleased with that Datamation Gather Round cart. To me, as a technology director and a mother of 2 kids, and watching kids and over the years, so we have several layers of safety for our students. One is a district content filter, and we use Lightspeed. We've used Lightspeed for quite a while and been very pleased with it. Content filters are difficult to manage at best, but Lightspeed is designed for schools, and they're very responsive if we have any issues. On our books that go home, we added Go Guardian. So Guardian is a filter. So our Chromebooks, when they come back into school at the high school, are actually double filtered. But we had to keep the district filter because we have devices other than Chromebooks. Go Guardian really does work only on a Chromebook. Now, Go Guardian was not purchased initially as a content filter. It was purchased because of anti-theft and tracking on it. But the content filter on Go Guardian is very nice on the Chromebook. It's very manageable, very granular. Matter of fact, you can filter YouTube through it. So it's a very nice solution if you're looking for a content filter for Chromebooks. We use Gaggle's Human Monitoring System for Google. And I'll talk a little bit more about those, like Go Guardian and Gaggle, in just a little bit. Through 12, I've talked a little bit about the incoming freshmen receive a Chromebook that they keep their high school career. So when they come, the idea was that in 4 years we would have all students having a Chromebook at school. So every year that incoming group of freshmen come get that Chromebook. That's their same device that they will keep throughout their high school career. So we're trying to give them a sense of responsibility, sense of ownership of that device. Students not take that Chromebook home in the summer until they've earned 11.5 credits. In Texas, it's pretty common to have a 9th grade bubble where students don't quite want to get out of 9th grade because they don't earn enough credit. So we were trying to encourage students to be academically successful. So we actually had some freshmen this past year who got to take them home during the summer, but students take them home in the summer. The thing about Chromebooks is really, you'd rather they take them home and use them because Chromebooks update every time you turn them on and put them on the internet. So that keeps them updated and happy and healthy. Now, students can take this Chromebook with them after graduation. I've had a couple of questions about this lately. How can that be with public funds? We actually, when we took this through our legal department, because the Chromebooks have fully depreciated by the time that the student leaves for graduation, and we actually have written in policy that we can do an equipment transfer for students. That's how we are able to legally send those Chromebooks home with students. Through 12, we also require a coverage fee for devices. That fee goes, last year we actually insured our Chromebooks and determined that probably we should do a self-coverage and be better off instead of paying for an insurance. So the RCO ranges from $15 to $31 annually. The insurance fee for a Chromebook, C720p, was $31 annually. We ended up this year, instead of having just half of the school, this has been our second year of implementation at high school, instead of having just 2 grades of Chromebooks, we had the Chromebooks that were put in the carts, we distributed those, so all grades 9 through 12 have Chromebooks as of this year. So we were able to accelerate that plan by 2 years. So it is the Chromebooks that were a year older, and for the kids who were going to juniors and seniors, we charged them $15 to $25, depending on whether they were juniors or seniors. $15 a year, or it was $25 for 2 years. What I found, and we hope to do, is to not charge $31 next year, but to lower that cost overall for all students. And we'll just have to watch this year on repairs, see how much it's costing us but we'd like to lower that cost to probably $20 to $25. So I didn't anticipate at high school with many parents or grandparents were having to pay for maybe up to 4 or 5 children. So that was a larger monetary burden than I hoped for them. So with that, but we do want to require a coverage fee so that students do to accept responsibility for that device, and that we do have funds to help pay for damage that occurs. So cover any damage that is, except for intentional, and our most common damage is a cracked screen. And in time, and we're into the implementation. We'll talk a little bit about repair in a little bit. Scholarships are available through some parent funding that we have in the district. So parents came to a training or attended a parent training that were able to get a scholarship for those kids if they qualify for free and reduced lunch. At Green, as I said before, the core content classrooms, and that would be math, science, English, and social studies, all are carts of 26 Chromebooks. The library has a checkout cart, and so any subject that's not considered core content, your athletics, fine arts, etc., they can check out the cart from the library, or if it's not being used, another core content teacher that's sharing can do that. So they're using those. Our librarians have a checkout system they use for that. And that equipment is refreshed every 5 years, just like their traditional PC equipment is refreshed. Grade 5, as I said when I showed you the picture of the black box cabinet, there are 13 devices in that Chromebook cabinet. Now, those cabinets actually hold 20, but you find any kind of cabinet that's going to hold it equals 10 or 20. And this way, if the campus wants to buy additional devices, they can certainly buy those and put them in a cabinet. They'll all have a checkout cart there also, and we will refresh that equipment every 5 years, just like we do their traditional equipment. Now, when we started this whole process and speaking with senior leadership, it's important to build in additional support personnel. We've actually doubled our number of devices in Temple ISD. So support personnel that we asked for that pertains directly to this, an increase of 2 instructional technology specialists. 3. We had one at the high school, one at our middle schools, and one at elementary. We sit to 5. Those increased, put 2 at the high school. We have 2 now at elementary and 1 at middle school. They tell you that we could double that and still have plenty of work to do. The work shifts as you find devices that are easy to use and devices that are easier to use, and the shift goes to how do I use that, and that's what they are responsible for doing. We changed a position to be a student device specialist. Very lucky to have a gentleman who was already certified as a teacher and as a Cisco, had taught Cisco classes. He's our student device specialist, and he not only specializes in our student devices and helps with those, but he also helps train students to use those devices and to repair those devices. Then we application specialist. Now, I added him here because we've moved so many things online. The school at this point, you have so many different resources with so many different logins and usernames and managing all of those. We need someone dedicated to managing all of our resources and our data for students. So that is one of his primary duties. Versus, we've been building our digital resources for probably the last 5 or 6 years. Our has changed its model of textbook adoption, and many of our textbooks are available via an online platform, or at least partially an online platform. I've worked very closely with the secondary education director, and while we don't choose a textbook so because it's online, we choose online textbooks if they make sense, the content, and they're a good choice content-wise, and they provide good resource. So we've been very pleased with a couple of our choices in particular. We're using Sapling Learning for math and for science. I've got great, very rich resources available in those content areas. Mental instruction, or for RTI, we are currently using Compass Learning. It's integrated through Renaissance Place, so we've got some assessment going on through Renaissance Place that will then the learning path in Compass Learning. We also use Read 180 at our middle schools for our students who are struggling a little bit in reading. We use Compass Learning and Renaissance Place in grades through 8. For credit recovery, we use E2020. We have an alternative high school that uses that, and we also use that at our disciplinary campus. What we're using Google Apps for Education is there are so very, very many free resources available that are so wonderful. And because you are using logging into the Chromebook with their Google credential, they can access many resources without having to sign up for those resources. They can automatically just use their Google authentication, which is great. Training. When we started, none of us knew an awful lot about Google, so we used a state organization called the Texas Computer Education Association, and they have Google trainers, and they came out and trained all of our high school teachers, and all teachers were required to go through a 2-day training on Google Apps for Education. During that time, all the instructional technology specialists, and me included, learned a lot about Google. We all turned around then and became Google certified trainers, so we can now do our own training. So ongoing, we require all teachers who are going to be receiving devices in their classroom to come a 2-day training prior to receive those devices in their classroom. As that training, they receive a Chromebook that they can take with them. That's the only device in our district that teachers are allowed to take outside of their classroom. So, that the right infusion of student technology will change teaching, learning, and lives. The thing we have found, I honestly didn't know an awful lot about Chromebooks 3 years ago, but I will say that I'm very much a believer in Chromebooks. They're very easy to manage, and that's probably one of the first things that you hear when you hear people talk about Chromebooks, And while ease of management is not the primary reason you should buy a device, it certainly does help when you're deploying a large number with a limited number of people to manage them. They're easy to work on. One of my technicians said the Acer C720P with the touchscreen was easier to work on than the laptops we had in the district. We have a very quick repair turnaround, and that's not only because we're in Temple, Texas, and one of the repair centers is in Temple. I've heard lots of my fellow districts in Texas talk about the great repair turnaround they get from Acer. So we're very pleased with that. The experience on a Chromebook is phenomenal for students, particularly younger students. They log into if you've never logged into a Chromebook, it immediately presents you with the user interface you need. There's a place you just can't go to the wrong place. So, and a huge advantage is you don't have to be on that Chromebook to save your work. It's saved in the cloud, so that if for some reason that Chromebook's not available, it's saved. It just go to the next device. So that's a great, easy experience. We also use Active Directory, so we have the Active Directory interface into Google Apps for Education. Our Active Directory interface actually feeds our student management system. We don't ever have to hand key in a student. That's from the student management. We don't. The Red put those students in the student management system. They feed into Active Directory, and then those turn around and feed into Google Apps for Education. So that's a great process that we've used. We didn't buy software to do that. One of our network folks set up the interfaces for those. That's been a really simple thing to do. I say fairly simple. It was a manageable thing to do. Now, a picture of an apple here. And you'll notice I put down touchscreen is highly favored. We had a student at the high school who drew that apple using Sumo Paint on her touchscreen Chromebook the first day she got it, and she had a stylus. So there's some power to using a touchscreen, as you can see there. And I spoke to this. Most educational applications do work on a Chromebook. We do have one. We use Imagine Learning at our lingual campus, and it does not work on a Chromebook as of yet, but all of our other applications do now work on Chromebooks. The Google account authentication, I did talk about that a little bit. What kids and teachers will say is the quick boot up. Open up your Chromebook, you're on your Chromebook. It's fast. So that is invaluable in a classroom setting. Of course, that you have instant updates. You don't ever have to bring a device in to have it wiped. Well, we sometimes have to bring them in to wipe them occasionally, but wiping a device usually, which takes probably 5 to 7 minutes, puts it back exactly where you wanted it to be. So the management and the ease of a Chromebook is a phenomenal thing for us here in Temple. Go Guardian, and we had initially to Go Guardian as a GPS tracker. That screenshot there is an example of what you see when you in Go Guardian. You can see the timeline of when kids have been logged on, who's logged on, what they're logging on to. That's where you can create white lists, black lists. And then when you install Go Guardian, you simply install it through the Google Admin Console as an invisible extension. Very, very simple to manage and add. We use, as I said, for human monitoring. So Gaggle works behind the scenes with Google. So they monitor not only our Gmail accounts, but they monitor all of our Drive applications. So some expected benefits of that have been, we expected that we would find kiddos who might not be using it appropriately, and certainly we did find those. But what we also found is students who have needed help, that have maybe they're having trouble at home, or maybe they're contemplating suicide, and they can't quite go to an adult for help. We've had instances of students going through their Google Docs to look for some help. So we have a process in place where we receive those notifications. We then submit those notifications on to the administration of that campus, either the counselor or the assistant principal or both, depending on what's needed. And I will say that I've worked with Gaggle on this, and they said that is not an uncommon thing to find, particularly with middle school and high school kids that use this system as a safeguard. Part is our teachers, parents, and students tell stories. So he came to our to pick up his Chromebook, and the instructional technology specialist saw him at the door to pick it up, and he looked down in his hands and he went away. She couldn't get to him fast enough to ask him. So the day he came back and he opened up his hands and he had his $31 bills. And I didn't have enough money yesterday, but I went back and worked another day painting cars and came up with his $31 to pick up his Chromebook. On the right is a student that you'll see in a picture later on. He went to the state capitol with us, but he was a freshman, became as a sophomore, had to turn his clock in over the summer. But he was so excited when he got his Chromebook back this year, he couldn't even leave the building. He had to open it up and use it immediately. Our weight room at our field house, and these kids are all using their Chromebooks to look at football plays. And a product called Huddle. They are studying for the Friday night game. These kids working in what we call the tech spot. The tech spot is a room that we have set aside at the high school where we store devices, do repairs. Kids can come bring their devices, or we do training. One student in this room said, you know, I didn't know that if I go to college, but now that I've got my Chromebook, I think I can. This is a student on the left is helping an assistant principal on the right. This is a part of our STIR program, Students for Technology Integration and Repair. So this student is helping this administrator with his cell phone for us this year. These kids not only help students and teachers and administrators with whatever problems they have and help distribute devices, but they also do Chromebook repair. And I told you we have a student device specialist, and he is the one that is helping teach these kids how to do repairs. Two kids happen to be hearing impaired students, and they have gained lots and lots of confidence over this year, so that they sometimes leave their interpreter behind when they go out to help students in the classrooms. These are of our 2-to-1 programs. You see some of our younger students. It was working different applications that we have within the RTI. Some of them are working on projects. And when we leadership, this is a young gentleman from the high school who presented to our school board on the softer side of Chrome and some of the stories that we've had of student leadership and student growth that we've seen. That, for me, has been absolutely the most rewarding piece of this whole project, is watching students taking power and leadership over their lives. This is, I went to the state capitol, to the Capitol Roundhouse. The name of it was the Capitol Schoolhouse Project. We were 9 districts that was selected to present to our state legislators about our Chromebook project. And just some pictures of them. My favorite quote of all time, this is one of our seniors from last year. She said, technology never stops improving, so it never stops improving you. All right, I've talked a lot. I'm going to talk, so if we have any questions, I'm ready.
We do have a few questions here, Luann. Thank you so much for this presentation. And as I get to the questions, I am just going to pull up the next slide where you guys can all have Luann's contact information if you want to reach her directly, and also the link to the website where the archive of this session would be available for you if you want to share with your colleagues later on. So just give me a second as I get to the first question here. question was, what would you say to a school who wants to go Chrome, but the teachers are skeptical on switching from Office?
Make them do anything if you can help it. You know, Google's free. So what we found is we didn't take anything away from teachers, but if you got comfortable with using Chrome and Chromebooks, when we do our 2-day training, we start on Chromebooks. We actually use their PCs and teach them how to use Google on their PC first. As they've gotten comfortable, they've abandoned Office as it made sense for them.
You know, that's what I've heard from a lot of school districts, as well as I work with a lot of schools, that's how the transition happens. You know, there's always some hesitation because you're moving from one platform to the other, but it's a organic transition is what the phrase that's been used is. If they start getting comfortable with Chrome, then they can get to the point of having to just take Chrome as their primary system as opposed to trying to switch back and forth.
Exactly. Or use both as they need to.
Yeah. The next question I have is, do you require a monitored or proctored exam for E2020?
Actually have certified teachers in the rooms with the teachers using E2020. It's more of a blended learning model where most of the instruction is online through E2020, but they also have small group instruction. So yes, there is a certified teacher in the room.
Next question is, was it free for Google to come out for the training?
No, it was not free for them to come out, and Google did not come and do the training. So I will say that the Google certification programs are free, and they have also added, and we trained our lead teachers on this past year, there's a Google Educator Level 1 and a Google Educator Level 2 certification that are free. They're online courses and are very intense but very thorough. Unless I had a teacher who was pretty familiar with the Google App Suite, I don't know if they could do that course very quickly, but those things are free, yes.
Next question is, one of the concerns was not being able to teach the kids Excel, etc. What is Google's answer to that?
And not being able to use Excel? Is that what you said?
For kids to have Microsoft Excel skills, is there an equivalent in Google, or what's Google's answer to that?
Okay. Google Sheets is Google's to Excel, although Sheets is definitely not the same product as Excel. What I recommend to my teachers who need Excel on their Chromebooks is have the students just sign up for a free, we really intend to move forward with Office 365 and look at it closer, but students can sign up for a free Office 365 account, and then they can use Excel there. So again, there are some places that a Chrome doesn't particularly make sense, or the Google Suite doesn't particularly make sense. Now, if you're just using a basic sheet and doing some simple calculations, Google's are great.
Is something that came out in the news just a couple days ago, and I've seen some rebuttals from Google in regards to that actually today. The question is, Google is set to merge Chrome OS and Android. How will you deal with this issue? This just came out in news earlier this week. Luann, if you have any.
I do. That was asked of me earlier this week too. I believe there is going to be sometime in the future kind of a merger of the two, or a very close integration of the two. Now, what came out in the news, I think, was that the Chrome OS was going to go away. The gentleman who is in charge of the Chrome OS, and I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, confirmed this on his feed and also on some other places. He said there's no plans for Chrome to go away, but you've already seen some integration pieces of Chrome and Android, and there are Chrome apps that are available in the Google Play Store. You're seeing touchscreen Chromebooks, you're seeing some flip devices. I think over the next few years we may see a merger of the two, but I think that will just be better for everybody all the way around.
the same here, we also heard similar questions, and just like you said, we also received, the same, the head of Chrome OS at Google. We also, got information from there that there is no way that Chrome is going to go away. Just like you said, Luann, it's going to be more a merger of the app space, so to speak. And, it's the way I look at it is there were certain apps within the Android space that were available as Play for Education apps, which will become more open to Chrome and versa. So there won't be segregation in terms of education apps are only available on one platform or the other. What I see, happening is just like you said, where the apps will be available and integrated on both platforms, so to speak, which is actually better for, which is actually better in a lot of ways, in my opinion.
Agreed.
This is my opinion. I want to make that clear.
Well, that's right. How about that?
Thanks. Another question is, on their Chromebook, can they use Office?
If you have Office 365, yes, you can use Office on a Chromebook. Chromebook is you can't install a program.
Yes, if it's any web-based program on a Chromebook, any web-based program, in Office 365 is web-based, is basically it's over there, so you can use whatever is web-based. I think installing it is a different question and depends on other things.
But it's been interesting and great for us. For instance, we use a scanner for our inventory. Well, the handheld scanner works fine on the Chromebook, even though I would think it would need an install of something. So, and on the printing side of things, you can use Google Cloud Print. So a PC already attached to a printer or prints to a network printer, you can use it as like a print server for a Chromebook. Very simply.
That we come to the end of the question answer session here. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, and thank you everybody for taking the time to join this session. As always, the recording will be available on our education website in about 3 business days. I think there's a couple of questions that popped up. Oh, there's one more last question that popped up, Luann, if that's okay.
Sure.
16 gig or 32 gig? If 16, do you find that is enough?
Chromebook is that? I'm sorry, I don't know.
You want to say that too, because you have the C720p, which is a touch screen, and I want to say that's 32 gig.
I'm pretty sure it's 32, and we did do 4 gig of RAM.
Yeah. And that's what we recommend, depending, obviously, there's budget considerations and whatnot, but if school can, our recommendation is always, at least within RAM, go 4 gig, and then you can choose whether 16 or 32.
Right, I'm pretty sure we did 32.
Yeah. That we do come to the end of this session. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to join. And as I was stating, a recording of this session will be available on our education website in about 3 business days. If you want to share with your colleagues, please feel free. And there's contact information for Luann here. She's available on Twitter also at Luann Hughes. And you can always reach out to Acer Education at Acer Education, and we can help you with any questions you have. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling Acer Operator.